Hi, everybody. This is Christopher Stephen Jacobson, Joanna Michaels here. I think Chris wants us to do a talk for Patreon at the moment. Um, Guys, I'm desperately trying to convince him that I'm not being too successful, that I want to go back and I want us to start having some discussions on the origins of everything for us and to put together it would have to be kind of a semi, to the best of our understandings at this current present moment, semi-fictionalized. I don't know what that's called, where you fictionalize something in sci-fi or history.
It's not. It's somewhere in between fiction and nonfiction. What she's talking about is galactic history. What we've been talking about for quite some time. In different areas. You've heard me mention snippets of it on the Interstellar Council and stuff like that. And some races have come through to show their role in the events of things. And the trepidation that I've had is we discovered certain glaring inconsistencies in certain things, or at least I have, to where also, like say my original book, you may not see that on the market anymore, and that there's a reason for that, is because there were some things that I had totally wrong, or they were warped to the point where the what was being written about was not recognizable in the area in which it existed within. Just like here's a very good example, a few good ones from the original book, which I may or may not have available for our Patreon crowd to show what I mean. There are three in there. There was one about a knight and a wizard. That particular thing was actually a set of memories from the White Knight history. There was two sections on something I thought was a channeling about other lifetimes or another dimensional space or something like that. Ended up being SSP memories, both of them. There was another one where this wasn't in the book, where I was seeing some other events going on. That was it was actually a memory coming back that other beings that I had around at the time were interfering with its reintegration. And that's why I'm at the stage I'm at now, trying to bring everything back in chunks because of those events taking place. But back to galactic history. Some of the information I was given only were in half truths, and then later on I got more and more and more and more. Now we're at the stage where I'm revetting the information that I was given before, just prior to now. And a lot of it is holding. A lot of it's holding. But there are some glaring things in there that I feel need more refinement. We can give basic information about the war and some of the old wars and old galactic history and some species roles in that. And I gain new information and new insight on that all the time, and even new technical information, like on ships, on time travel techniques, and on the roles that some of these beings played. I get that all the time. And as for the moment, that information seems to hold, and some of the old information, or most of the old information, still seems to hold completely. So that has not changed at all. My only trepidation behind it is, say we do get some information that does seem to actually fit, and a couple years from now, we find out it was something completely different. It flips it on its head, and it completely collapses the rest of the narrative. That has been my only trepidation behind it. Because I've seen that happen with certain things, to where it's a crucial bit of information, like it's a cornerstone, and it was a foundation that was built on a lie. So I'm very, very careful what I say in this area now on information I know will be timeless versus having to redact something later.
So for me, I feel that a lot of the information that we have as he just was saying, has
Mhm.
so far stood the
Oh,
test
it
of
stood the
time.
test of time. Yeah.
So I think my whole thing is, again, instead of trying to put out a piece of work that we're calling the facts, why don't we just create, and I think we can create a bit of a story that can be considered fictional, but with the twists and understandings that we currently have as an in general, because I feel that a lot of that is really going to be valuable for people now to be able to have a much bigger perspective of themselves and a much bigger perspective of this expression that we're in, that can then maybe provide them with something that will have them look inside themselves, think of their relationships to potentially some of this, and it may aid them with intrigue and aid them in thoughts of how to take this information and try to move forward. Again, so I'm not a big person on looking backwards to bringing anything from the past. I'm actually only want to look backwards to gain perspective to move forward. So for me, I feel that we do have enough information to give have a lot of very interesting discussions, but with the understanding, like we've always said, the truth is the truth until new truth comes along.
Mhm.
So if you wait sometimes for that moment of perfection before you do something, it's going to change anyway. Things change. And the one thing that we believe, and I don't think what I'm about to say is anything that you aren't comfortable with, is that
Mhm.
when people come in and when people tell their story, it's their perspective. So what the truth really is a culminations of perspectives. It's not really, everyone wants the truth, and it's really hard to have the truth. The truth will be something, and I said this yesterday in an interview, when we decide, if we ever decide to merge back with source and we really see things from that person's perspective, that's probably considered more of the truth. And I have a feeling if you do that, all you're going to get is a bunch of other people's perspectives. I just have a feeling
Mhm.
that's the show you're going to see. But so I'm not as worried if little pieces of information change, because then fine, tell another story. So I maybe some of you guys can write your thoughts on this, write it back after you see this, and kind of what you think. I know Chris hates to redact. I know he has a perfectionism streak, but that's really hard in this business. I'm just telling you guys. And again, I was speaking about it yesterday on an interview that we did. That's like almost impossible for any human to be able to do that at this stage of our development. But I think there's value in the greater story that will help people. And so, I'm going to still encourage us to take some chances, but again, to do it in a way that it's understood, that this is taking a lot of information and a lot of perspectives from a lot of different people and trying to meld it into a semi understandable thought process. But I already know that it's been given to us from perspectives and not even the Akashic. What's the Akashic? All the Akashic
An
really
amalgam
is,
of other perspectives.
that's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah, and it's a storage file cabinet in the etheric is basically
Right.
what it is.
So again, so we've been talking about this, this morning, and we've been talking about, what are the sticking points, and for again, some of the sticking points for me in the bigger picture story are not that hard to rectify. It's some of the for example, when did somebody maybe, really was more for the other team than than a
Than we
happy
previously
side
thought.
than we
Yeah.
previously thought. And I'm like, yeah, but we've always told people everyone fell in this expression. Everyone fell. And in fact, in
Became
one
embroiled
lecture,
in this. Yeah.
yeah, in one lecture that, we put together that many of you, I don't think have been privy to seeing, we talked about it. It began when when this whole infrastructure and this whole expression was originally being developed. And so it's not that people and these people didn't fall. We've always said that they have fallen. They had to experience this expression as well. The point is when. And to me, the when, being exact on that, isn't the biggest deal. So we'll still continue to have that discussion, and but we probably will not proceed until both of us are comfortable with proceeding. And so I welcome any thoughts. Chris probably would too, hearing some of your perspective, about putting out again something that would be a culmination of perspectives to try and weave it into a story that gives people a better understanding of what we feel this expression was all about, and relate it to, again, everything that's happened to us in the past and what's currently going on. So,
Yeah, if any of you also have any focal points you want us to focus on, like galactic history, for instance, a particular area, a particular world, a particular race, a particular area that you want to see started on, from Maldek to any area of the galactic history that you want to see revived or want to see us get into, by all means, put it in the comments underneath this video on our Patreon. And that was what I've said before is the only trepidations that I have. It's because this is also why many people in what I do don't always write books, because this is a major concern for them as well. I've run into several people that they want to write a book, but they go, God, the information just keeps changing, and then it makes the previous information out of date or a lie in some fashion, because it just keeps updating. It's like getting a computer update, all constantly every week or something like that. It's similar where that's been a trepidation of a lot of people like myself. This is why you don't. That's also why you don't see a lot of them public either.
because I think
Yeah.
it's kind of that programming
Yeah.
that you're expected to be, perfect and tell the truth. We're all set up with that programming of what is the truth, when actually the truth is perspective. And so, and your truth of whether something is good or bad depends on where you stand. So I think as people's minds understand that, it then becomes easier just to put forth the information, um, be, and not be worried as much about every little detail being perfected, because I just don't believe at this stage of the human development that actually should be an expectation of a human to be able to do that. So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, those people, I believe, had a bit of programming in them. Even I want to tell you this. Even her speaking about this today caused my brain to freeze up, start to do that weird brain freeze thing that I can't even describe it. It's like it's kind of similar to when the SSP stuff comes up, but to where that rippling starts. But it's not the same thing. This is a total like weight on the head sort of thing. This is more about like this, and it's very weird. Anytime the topic is brought up, it's very strange that way, and it's disorienting. And this is also another thing that people don't know. Some of those PowerPoint videos that you've seen on our Patreon. The last one we did, I know it was supposed to be 5 of 5. It's only at 4 of 5 at the moment. I want to rectify that as well. What happened when we would work on those? Every single time, didn't matter what the topic was, didn't matter what was being said at all. And that's what happened to me every single time. Didn't matter where it was, didn't matter what it was that we were working on. And I've also spoken about when I do shows, sometimes I have to have a script. Uh, and also working on shows with other people. Sometimes there's a lot of interference. You've seen that from Interstellar Council to things I worked on with Ryan or Richie or both of us. Sometimes there are interferences that come in, and this area was no different, except that it was far more intense. And this is something that I've been wondering as to why that was taking place. I've never gotten a sufficient answer on that, why that was such a focal point. But that's what has been happening for myself. And do I think that there's a bit of programming involved? Yeah. Okay. I'll bet that there's a bit of programming in there. Do I want to see all this stuff succeed and all this out in the open? Yeah, I do. Wholeheartedly, I want to see it out in the open. It's just that I have been extremely hesitant again with recent developments in that narrative, to the point where one, if they were looking at it from a different perspective, would think that we were tricked before and now we're seeing the truth. And what if this isn't the truth now? They're seeing it from that perspective. I don't see it that way, but others may see it that way. How I see it, and it's how Joanna was seeing it, is just truth is the truth until a better truth comes along. Even if the main players in that narrative all turned out to be either fictitious or turned out to be bad all along. And as we've said before, of course, these beings got caught up in their own creation, got caught up in their own game, which has been said numerous times. Also, other authors have said this as well. I've been toying with the fact, well, what if these beings were the bad guys? What if they were? What if it was just multiple faces and multiple facets of the same darkness? And that's something I've been toying with in my own head, and that's what has had me concerned. Whether that thought was planted in my head or if I came up with that on my own, that I have to discern. But this has been an area of concern, and I am well aware that an oversoul has had multiple expressions and in multiple different areas, which include darker beings. And I've seen this in a multitude of different people's reads, where I've literally had to unsnip a darker expression from their overall being that is trying to bleed through and become an rogue expression. I have run into this on numerous occasions. Very recently, all of last year, I saw it multiple times last year. And do I feel this is what's happening with some of this other information? Yes. I know you had a perfect analogy for that whole thing with the oversoul and the multiple expressions too.
So again, I think one of the hardest things for people to be willing to accept, and I think again, this is something that's really important to discuss. If we were going to tell a story, the one truth that we would try to put in there is that we've done it all. And we've done things that would be considered either good or not so good, even in the same lifetime, depending on where you're standing, depending on, as you're watching this, how is it affecting you? If it's affecting you in a horrible way, and this, that, and the other, you may think they're malevolent. But if you're reaping the rewards of it, you may think they're benevolent. So again, as we grow and as those concepts end up having to drift away to more of just an experience, okay, without defining as we work our way out of that, we have to accept that we've done it all. I think for people, again, if you're feeling trapped, and as people say, I'm trapped in the matrix, you've got this ongoing programming going on right now that you're a victim to something, that you're good, that something else has taken advantage of. So you have a mindset, and then you work on a story in your head of how to overcome. Is there anything wrong with that? No. You
Mm-mm.
can't even imagine, again, people that have been victimized or whatever, and they are in their own heads creating a story of how to survive it, how to overcome it, how to uh, if they feel they need justice, and they're creating all of these stories in their head to survive it. And even in some people's memories that are coming back now, they may those may be the stories that they made up in their heads to survive something that was happening to them versus an actual factual thing that has occurred. And again, in your mind, it all seems real. I mean, again, flight or fight, if you feel like there's a lion and you can really think there's a lion standing where, you're going to bring up that same fear as if there was a lion standing in front of you. VR right now is a great example of that too. Put on a VR thing, do something scary. You're going to feel what it feels like to be scared. So I think for me, the one thing that I try to say is that it's complicated. We want to simplify things into, again, a right or wrong, a this or that. We want to do that, but it's not that simple. And so, when we think about our co-creations, even now, you have to think about, you may be wanting something so badly that, you don't give consideration to what it's going to do to somebody else. And you may want something that ends up throwing somebody else into poverty and you don't give a crap. Well,
Mhm.
again, from the other person's perspective, you not giving a crap or whatever is maybe a malevolence, but you're doing it because you're trying to get in balance, which is a benevolence. So it's complicated. And so we have to be able to understand that these conversations are complicated and get out of our own way of thinking everything is just a black or white. And of course, it's easier to want to believe that all the lives you ever had were done in benevolence, but
Mhm.
all of our lives were not done that way. So the example again and again, and also the example of what I feel is timelines or co-creations or whatever, the one example that I've always tried to use to give people an idea of who they really are at a soul level, the big soul, the everything, the who totality of what you are, is to envision yourself as being this grand universe. You're not just the central part of it, you're the all of it, okay? And that's how magnificent you are. And if you think about that concept of everything being done all at once, so it's, you have to think in really in a perspective, what does that mean? So again, what I can come up with right now is just probably the surface of what it really is all about, but it's a starting point to give you an idea. Again, I'm not afraid to say that and someone come along and say, well, that's not the truth. I'm like, it's the best I could come up with to explain it in my current present moment form with my current present moment problem. I am sure it will be enhanced and be said differently with more vibrancy as things move along. And there will be adjustments because, again, we learn more, we grow more, the truth alters. Um, and your understanding alters. So this is my current understanding, is that if you think of yourself as a grand universe and you're all of it, and in that concept of there really is no time and everything is happening at once. So again, that grand universe is not flat, right? It's 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever it is. It's this enormous piece. Lots of stars, maybe so many that you can't count, lots of planets, lots of everything going on in it. And so if you almost think of every star in your solar system is you, and then every star is slightly doing something different, meaning, you different, probably people would probably say different timelines, different whatever. But you can almost even think of it as they're just different pictures, just stagnant pictures. And so, can you imagine how many stars there must be to be able to put a flip book together? And so I say, really, I think if people can understand what's going on, you have to think of every star as that is like an onion skin. And you take all these different onion skins and you decide you're going to make a book. Okay, a flip book, one that once your onion skins together, you're going to flip right through it. You're going to see the movement, you're going to see whatever. And then, you decide as a grand soul of who you are, of all of the different pieces and stars you're going to put together to put your flip book together. And you're going to flip through it. And then you're going to decide, do I like that flip book or not? Do I learn anything from it? Well, maybe what I need to do is I think I'm going to change this here at this point. And I'm going to put these few pieces of onion layer back and I'm going to pull these other ones in instead. And I'm going to flip this book and I'm going to see what I like. And okay, I kind of like being here better. So in that sense, the choosing of the different onion layers is the jumping of timelines, what we call the jumping of timelines. But it's
Mhm.
just picking out something. Yeah, I kind of like this scenario a little bit better. And so it's a very interesting concept and again, and I think it's important to know that the person putting the flip book together is you. Okay. And so in your grandness of yourself, in your grand universe. So, and that for many people, maybe not all, you intentionally came to this expression to experience this. Some people may have been pulled in accidentally, but apparently their grand self decided to play along anyway because it didn't pull itself out of it.
Mhm.
And you're putting together a flip book now. And so, where we are in that, in that potential, expression of understanding all of this again, from the fall to the lifting, from darkness to light. Where are we? We seem to be at that crossroads of maybe deciding, did we get enough of experiencing one side of a coin, the darkness, which we went through first? Or do we feel we still don't have all of our complete understanding and there's still parts of it we want to experience? Or are we going to really start changing out some pages and are we going to go into something new? And again, part of going into something new is understanding a little bit more about the old that maybe you didn't see so that you can transition the story without these big lumps in them. Okay. You don't just have a book where it's beginning and end and nothing in between, which is really what a lot of people want. They want to skip the in between. So if you can think of yourself in that grand of a way, then again, the point is, what do you want the end of the flip book to look like now? And then how do you go about selecting the individual little onion layers to make something sensical of it all,
And
and learn
whatever
from it?
and whatever expression that maybe you favored at some point. This is also what people tend to do in not only their past lives, but any other expressional thing. They'll identify with a singular one that they maybe enjoyed or enjoyed the style of and bring it through here a lot. You see this a lot in the cosplay communities and and a lot of the science fiction communities. It's maybe something similar that they experienced out in the cosmos or here in another lifetime, and they're favoring this. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But just know that that's just one page in a very large book.
And this is where the conflicts come in.
Mhm.
So let's say many of us, again, I always say, I don't know why, because I think what it is looking to the end of the flip book and saying we're already there. It's like, it's the same thing as saying people have come back from the future, we're already there, but they've come back to ensure we still go there or something like that. And I'm like, but it's kind of weird because I feel we've already made it. Why are we so worried about making it or whatever? And I don't understand all the dynamics. I'm not here to tell you all the dynamics of that. I'm just saying that I don't think I'm alone to feel like, well, we really have accomplished this. Um, And so maybe, again, I think we've circled the toilet a lot. So maybe we're learning different aspects of how to come into unity, and we're not just doing it one way. We're going to do it in multiple different ways. But again, when you're looking at a flip book, and like Chris was saying, we identify ourselves, in over time in certain ways. So in part of our flip book, you have to think of yourself as a grand being. Where have you been and what have you done? Have you spent lifetimes as a cat person or an Antigua, or what are the rock people called?
Oh yeah, those stone
The
people. Yeah,
stone people, or all of the other different races where you've explored in different areas, and then you start to identify something that you want to carry in as a theme throughout all of these lifetimes in your flip book, and that kind of becomes what you now describe yourself to be. So an interesting dynamic will occur is to when you have described yourself as something and you really defined yourself as something. And maybe then in order to get to the end where you're looking at, you may have to do some readjusting in your flip book. The best example I can give, not again in a bad way, is if you've defined yourself as a warrior, and your definition of time of a warrior is literally by the sword and ending your conflicts with whoever loses their head type warrior. And on earth in many, many, many lifetimes, it was that physical brutality of that type of a warrior. And so if you identify as that, you may have a hard time adjusting to moving into a unity where that is not how you solve your conflicts anymore. So then there has to be an adjustment of moving from one type of warrior to another type of warrior that better fits where you want things to go. I actually feel that that's a huge, huge issue right now, where you have a lot of warriors and types of energy on this earth, and how things were always solved in a warrior type of energy before is not going to be good for the type of experience we want moving forward. So there are a lot of people that are in personal struggle of which ones of their onion layers do they now want to start pulling in that shows a transition, or your story is all just messed up. There's no congruency. There's nothing going on. So I really think that kind of stuff is happening to a lot of people. So a lot of reflection, a lot of subtle changes of onion layers being pulled in to turn a person's warrior energy from one of literally killing to solve your problem to how do you do it in a different way, and then how do you do it in a way where maybe before, again, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what's going on now, where it's my way or the highway, even in thought process. That's not new. Wars have always occurred like that, where you can't compromise, you can't do whatever, you're fighting each other off with somebody's head. And so in a sense, right now, with what people would be referring to as trying to silence an opposition, not allow different viewpoints, thinking somehow that that's rotten, you're back to that old warrior type of energy where it's either one way or off with your head. A lot of countries are struggling with those mindsets, not just what's going on with the United States, but other countries that have gone through that as well. And some of them are still in that mechanism of, it's either one thought process or off with your head, or I should say, you're sent to re-education camps and then killed because someone needs a transplant. But, you know, that's a lot of what's going on as well. How do you re-choose in the flip book? Now, some people won't. They're going to die with their same warrior stance. They're not going to end it in this lifetime,
And they're
that
not
whole thought
necessarily
process.
wrong either. It's one of those,
Right.
it's better to die following your own way than to live in someone else's sort of,
Right.
yeah.
And then they'll, maybe then their flip book will change in the next lifetime or they won't for a while because there still will be a need to have rubs for people to learn off of and things like that. That's still going to be needed. We're not just all of a sudden going to lose the whole concept of learning from duality. It's going to slowly change over time into something else. So that rub to help people grow, that contrast is still going to be needed. Again, the goal is to slowly here, first, let's get rid of the overage, and then let's do that. So in a co-creative process, because again, we try to spend as many conversations as we can, the bottom line is we're co-creative beings. If you can think about choosing your onion layers of your flip book, that's the co-creation part. You're co-creating the story. But again, sometimes even as a writer, you have to go to the end to see what your goal is and then figure out all of the nuances. Now, I'll be quite honest. Some people don't want a boring story. They want twists, they want churns, they want adventures. They don't want to do it as just one standard way. They're like, well, this person's doing it that way. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. They're going straight up the mountain. I'm going to go up and down and around and whatever. And so people, again, are going to cut the pies of how they create their stories in many, many, many different ways. And that will enrich the whole. Again, it always is an enrichment of different experiences that will be the whole. So this is, I think this is, again, another reason why I really want to do the galactic history, to kind of give perspective, of what this is really kind of all about. And again, but first understanding that we fell, meaning we forgot who we really are at that enormous big level, who we really are and what we're really doing. I don't think having some sort of perspective in that is going to change your experience. I think it may help people be less afraid and maybe be willing to move forward and not stagnate. For people that this feels right enough to, and again, not right meaning perfect, but right enough to say, you know what, this has some semblance of a feel that, yes, I just need to move. I just need to explore. I just need to move on. I need to work on my flip book. And it maybe will inspire people and get them stuck out of, again, the attempts of keeping people in those lower chakra energies, to have a bigger picture understanding, again, in all the way to the end, that we know where we came from, that we know what this is all about. So that's kind of what I want to give you guys to think about, how to put into some sort of visualization, story like, which what I've just said is kind of story like, way to interpret at our current present level, our way to interpret what we think is going on around us and what we're doing. So I have no problems at all with somebody coming out later or 100 years from now for that perspective to change some, be altered some, be expanded upon. Doesn't affect me at all. I just feel, again, part of what holds us back is not telling any story, because we are in the old programming of, if it's not perfect, you're going to be criticized or devalued or something. And I'm like, well, we're supposed to be getting out of that mindset. So we have to be brave enough to actually just be willing to have the conversation. And I think everyone feeling this now knows my intention. My intention is to give people pieces of information to help them grow, not to stagnate them. So I think the intention behind it, to have the conversation, is what should drive us now, not the quest for the perfection of the ultimate truth. So
Yeah, that Yeah, that's the thing that I was struggling with there for a little bit is doing exactly that. As I've said with a lot of other people that work in this field, yeah, you gain more information, but some people, some of these people will work for years on compiling the information and never truly be done with it. And it never truly be done because it's always piling up. I knew of someone who had all these notes and I think wrote a book. I'm not sure if they wrote more than one, but then their family saw it as crazy and destroyed it after they died, and committed a huge travesty against the information. But In that, my point is, as things go, as that information comes along, maybe those books and those different stories and those the different recordings are those different stages of that information building, and at least it's out there where it is. And like I said with my original book, From the Fall to the Lifting, originally what was going to be done was a complete overhaul of that book, and where I was writing in where I thought who truly spoke and where in it. And I may end up putting it out for the Patreon for people to show them where I was at that stage. And I have a ton of channelings, even to the closet next to us, that are in a bin over here. There are a couple bins of information that I now know is severely distorted. And I mean, I won't put that information out there because it's out of date, and some people might not mesh with it.
But
Yeah, but
again, people have to start somewhere.
yes, yes, and they got to start somewhere. And am I opposed to the books? Am I opposed to any of this information? No, no, not at all. It's just that like I said, I've had that severe trepidation about
But
it.
I
Yeah.
think honestly, you
Yeah.
and I were talking about this. If we're also going to be honest, I think again, what we tend to bring through a lot, the clippets of the information we tend to bring through as a channeler, there has to be some familiarity with it for I think for a lot of people, meaning something about it is close to home. So so it seems familiar, it seems whatever, because somehow your soul may have been somehow involved during these time frames, or have already had a past life with maybe some of these races. That's not, all of this isn't necessarily 100% brand new. And so where I think the challenge comes in, and I was asking Chris, did he feel that this was part of his challenge, is because some of it actually is a personal part of it, like a personal truth. Like, you wanted to believe your, like, when you run across that your father, I'll just give this example, that your father or someone close to you was, you really had a good experience with, you really followed a lot, and then what you found out in the background is that, everything you ever did with them was because he robbed banks all the time and he didn't mind killing people in the process. Right? So you're in conflict because you basically, want to preserve these loving, memories of somebody, but yet they were a dirty, rotten scoundrel as well. And how do you tell that story? And then you get a little bit of ashamed because maybe there were little signs that you ignored, that maybe, you know, you you don't know what to do with all of this conflicting, information. You don't want to believe that maybe that person had a little bit of psychopath side, and you fell hook, line, and sinker for it. So again, I think some of these discrepancies come up because they're hitting hard to home. I think so. I think one of the big areas, well, I'll just tell you right out, guys, one of the big areas that he's having a lot of conflicts with is truly the role of the group called the White Knights. I think you're having a lot of,
Well, I did find out, of course, a lot more about their history. They're not all bad, but they weren't all good either. So it's like, yeah.
and the
Um,
fact that, you potentially had experiences in both sides, meaning sometimes intention was good, even though somebody else's overall agenda may not have been great, but your intention within the group may have been pure and good. But there are also times you probably experienced multiple lifetimes, or sometimes all within the same lifetime of, there was a period of time that you called yourself a white knight, but you were raping, pillage, and plundering. You really weren't that virtuous person that you want to only believe you were now. So my whole thing is, well, just, I think we need to all just accept that we really have done it all.
mhm,
And we've done it all in a single lifetime too. And again, being able to look at that, a bit more objectively, because the bottom line is, who are you at this current present moment? Not to be held hostage to everything you've done in every lifetime, or we'd all be condemned
mhm,
because we've done it all. So, I think, sometimes that's hard to personally come to terms with. And uh and again, and then the fear of, I actually think that that's more of the issue than your fear of someone telling you you didn't get it quite right. I actually tend to think it's the more personal reflections of it that hold a person back, because you don't want to see yourself as imperfect, or even though we can say that no one will know it all, you still want to feel you know it.
mhm,
I mean, it's just an inherent conflict, right? So I think part of that is going on as well. But I think, I hope here sooner than later we persevere through that and do it anyway. I really do. Because again, I think, with the caveat of these things, and that again, it's best to put it in a story format, even create characters, let's say, that, or some history, that again, any fictionalized story, any story, normally is a fable or myth or whatever, is not exactly quite what was put in the books, right?
mhm. Yeah, it's always favoring whoever wrote it anyway. So yeah.
It is what it is. So, but I think again, if you can think of yourself as a great, great, great soul, and understand part of your greatness that's actually maybe voluntarily involved in all this, it may give you a little bit of perspective. And then how do you co-create? You're taking out different pieces of the onion layers, and then having a different, slightly different experience. Or you don't like the book, so you rewrite a little bit, so you're jumping timelines. And I think there needs to be a little bit more empowerment, that you are writing your own timeline. You may not be as influenced as you think. Give
Mhm.
that consideration. And because right now I know so many people are afraid that they're on the wrong timeline, because they're actually giving their ability to create the flip book to someone else. Um, and if you're doing that, I'd stop it. But you may actually not be. You're just playing along.
Mhm.
So it's just things to think about.
Yeah, so and I think that's this is a good place to stop the discussion here at the moment. So
Thanks for just calling in to talk with Chris and
we're
Joanna.
talking with Chris and Joanna, yeah. So yeah, this is a pretty good discussion today. So thank you everybody for watching this. Bye bye now.